Thank you all for coming here. I'm really excited to bring the artist Brian Wedgworth to you. He's coming to us from Harlingen, Texas, where his studio is. He's made these amazing steel sculptures, and he's going to talk a little bit about them. I'll ask some questions, and then we'll all ask some questions. Are you ready?
How do you want to? Sure.
Sure. Tell us about this series.
We started a little bit about myself. I've been welding since I was about 11. And I did the whole ag mechanics and stuff in high school, and then I found the art department one night. And I met Richard Heisman and became really good friends. And I did a lot of projects with him, but a really big one that kind of changed, I guess, the trajectory of what I wanted to do. Was building a 50-foot statue of Virgin Guadalupe, and that was a lot of fun.
Could you say that again? Building
50-foot statue of the Virgin Guadalupe. It was built in Alton, Texas. It was in 94, 95 back then. But after doing that project, then working on that, it really inspired me to continue to go doing the sculpture stuff. And we did shows together and things, and we'd like go into the junkyard and stuff. We'd take a show up, and then we'd have the 16, 18-foot trailer empty. We'd go to the junkyard, we'd take a bunch of stuff back, and we'd take material. And his wife was there. Nancy was kind of not happy about it. I was like, what do you guys, no. But anyway, I have a studio in Harlingen. I've had it since about 2004. I got commissioned for a really large piece, and that kind of fell through. But me and my wife decided to keep the studio. And it's about 5,000 square feet. It's full of metal, stuff I've collected, I want to say pretty much through my whole life. My older brother calls it like my bedroom, just bigger when we were going up the stairs. And, it's where I build stuff. So you walk in. We created a small gallery in space. It's about 750 square foot gallery in space, so we could have a showroom, and then the rest is studio. We have a steel shop, there's a wood shop, and then there's just metal and tools and stuff everywhere. I work very. I don't ever really work on one piece at the same time. I work on a whole bunch of pieces at the same time, and I described it on the radio interview as almost like composing music. So you're building components, cubes, squares, the spheres, and then you're playing with these parts, and then you start kind of laying them out, and then playing with them, and kind of having fun with the movement and the balance and things to make it all work together. And then these, I call this the reflection series, because in 18, I'd gotten sick, and I wasn't going to be able to work in the studio for a while because I had to take care of some medical stuff. I was in San Antonio, and a friend of mine was letting me use the studio, and I had a 5-gallon bucket, a grinder, and a welder, and I was able to build quite a few of these smaller pieces over here, these smaller reflection pieces, and I kind of grew into these little bit larger ones. But I like to play with the shapes and the forms and the balance and the negative in these shapes. So, any questions or anything?
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Can you tell a little bit about where you find the pieces? Like where do these found steel parts come from?
So I do find some of the junkyard. My father, growing up, worked in the oil field, so he's always brought me parts and components and stuff that they were getting rid of, and he put it on the back of his pickup, and I wound up with a lot of these rings here are actually DOP rings. Let me walk over here and show you. These are DOP rings. These are actually gaskets that go between the pressure vessel. They're like gaskets, and they under lots of force, and that's what keeps the pressure. It's like an O-ring, but they're made of metal, and I would get those from there. This is also another one here, and I was telling them earlier, some of them I like to bury steel sometimes. This is the only one in here I think that has the buried, but I bury them for 5-6 years, let the earth do what it's going to do to it, dig them out. I do a muriatic acid wash, and it kind of washes the rust out, and then you've got these really beautiful textures that nature created, and it gives it a real nice element.
So you bury your steel in behind your studio?
Mission. I got one where I grew up.
Okay.
Dad and my little brother got about 15 acres. And Just gotta remember I married it, but yeah. But, yeah.
Sure. You don't like organize it, take a picture, know where it is, and
I don't know. Because after years, I'm kind of, I thought I buried it here, but
Run after a squirrel.
yeah, something like that. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, I love playing with the fire, and I love playing with the elements of steel, things that you can't really do with ceramic, you can't do with wooden things. That you can do these kind of undulating things that kind of, that if this was wood or ceramic or something, it would probably break. But with steel, it just kind of balances and flexes and stuff. Like on that piece over there where you can go way out, it looks like it's hanging out in space. So, yeah. The idea I've got behind these pieces here was the whole reflection series was, it was something that I can control at the time. A lot of times I work very large, 10, 15 feet tall pieces, and I was going through something and I had to work smaller. And it was a time of focusing and kind of looking in to yourself, and then just kind of trying to find peace in the only thing I could control, which was, within the circle at the time. So
are these found or do you make?
these are well caps. These are well caps. The yellow one there is actually a street bump, or 2 street bumps. At one time I had about 65 of those. The pieces have all been built. They've all gone to their homes and stuff. Funny enough, I found them in a Walmart parking lot. I would drive home from Harlingen to the studios, about a half-hour drive, and there was a brand new Walmart there, and they had all these steel bumps, and every time the semis would turn, they would bump them out, and I would collect them. And when they wound up, I do love going to the junkyard and finding bits and pieces and things.
So did you add the paint or was that?
The paint, the yellow paint is actually what it looks like when it's on the street. They're yellow, and then I added the red to it. So a lot of people ask me how I make the kind of donut shape here. Those are 4 weldable elbows. Kind of I've been doing that for quite some time. It's either crowns or different things. I've made large abstract model pieces, and it's kind of for a crown up on top. At some point, I'm going to make one that's 8 feet in diameter. I have just 2 of the parts to make it. So, but any other questions or?
Yeah, while you're talking about how you make this, how do you make these without them exploding?
It's mild steel, so it's not going to really explode. You just you tack them together, you get them lined up. Depending on the thickness of them, sometimes you put a little wedge or groove in it, and then when you weld it up, they kind of ping. They pop a little bit, but they don't ever really blow up. There's no gas or anything in them.
Yeah.
So, this is actually
I just figured maybe compressed air might.
Oh, but you can. Okay, so you can. There's an artist in Lubbock named Will Canning who inflates steel. He does those kind of what do you call it, like floaties and different things that he's taken and he welds the shapes, welds the seams, puts them into a kiln, gets them red hot, and then injects air into them. Or some people use water or whatever, but they expand and they make these forms. So you can actually make like floaties, but out of steel, thin steel, but it's still. That's the great thing about steel. It's really malleable, and it's got when it's red hot, it's like clay, and then you can beat it and move it into different directions and things, and then as it cools, it becomes rigid or hard and permanent. So I've always enjoyed the kind of. In college, it was clay and steel. Clay and steel was all still playing with fire, but but it was that whole malleability when it's red hot. So I had some pieces similar to this that were cut like this, that were the rails from a train track, and I twisted them. I got a good section, and I twisted them, I cut them, and I built some pieces with them. But I loved the cutting. This is cutting with a torch here. I cut these to give it the texture. Some years back, me and Richard started carving on steel. It was fun to do. It was just something different. So, any other questions?
How else do you make the textures? Like, is it just bearing stuff, or do you do textures otherwise?
I got there's a tool called a needle scaler in the shop. There's different chisels and things, and you can heat up new textures, or just sanding with the different grits of sandpaper to get it from an unfinished state to a very finished and polished state. These have had the mill scale taken off of them when they were made. At the end, they were gray, and then I ground the mill scale off of them. So when steel goes through a process, it goes through the different presses and things, and there's like a little thin carbon layer on it. And then you could work that surface off, or you could leave that surface. So I like my bigger pieces, my outside pieces are unpainted, and I like the transition. They're almost like butterflies when they go through their whole metamorphosis outside, that they change and evolve into the final color. About a year and a half out, they finally get usually their whole coat from the rain and different things that hit. So the rest.
Do you do anything at that stage to fix it, or it's just done?
The bigger ones are usually fairly thick. No, they're done. Yeah, might have to scrub the bird dew off of them every now and then, but that's it.
So how do you prevent them from rusting?
Like these indoor pieces all have a coating. It's a crystal clear enamel that I use just on the work. Yeah, and it holds up pretty good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put these outdoors, being on the coast, but indoors it would be fine. Any other questions?
So what is your work schedule like? I mean, grinding in hot weather is not like
I'm not looking for the summer, but it's actually I have to do recovery after I did 2 things right before up into this show. So the studio right now, the floor is just supposed to be concrete color. It's gray, just full of steel. I gotta sweep it up and get it all going again. But I have some projects I'm working on. The schedule is usually we take care of Lady's mom, so I'm usually at the house till maybe 1:30. I get down to the studio, and then I work till 10 o'clock at night, and then I go home. So
Cooler in the evenings.
it's cooler in the evenings.
you're on the swing shift.
Yeah. And I always put ever since the beginning, it's kind of the whole thing. A lot of people leave their tools and walk away. At the end of the night, I wrap up everything, all the cords, all the tools, and everything. I put it away, and then it's like starting fresh the next day. I don't necessarily sweep, but I will pick up all my tools and lock everything away. And that's just the way. Yeah.
I have a question. A lot of the work in this series has a lot of circles in it. Were you always attracted to like circles, or was it just this reflection series that's kind of started that?
Circles is like it's that whole cycle. So that was also partly to like focusing on the whole what I could control, but also knowing that there's a cycle in life and everybody has a beginning and an end. But the life cycle of these pieces, they'll go on one after one. So it's just the circle. I just have always worked with the circles and different shapes and things.
Any other question? Do you have anything that you haven't said that that we should know?
So there's some people asked. Well, the radio lady asked me about Dee Dee asked me about the tajitos, and tajitos is sewing. So if you look at this is actually a wheeled sewing machine here. This is an old Singer sewing machine thing. But tajitos is you're stitching. So you're actually sewing these 2 pieces together, and that's what makes it hold. Sometimes people grind them or not across the bottom. You're kind of stitching these pieces together. So that's the whole idea of the tajitos, where you're sewing the pieces together. I don't know if any of y'all weld or have welded before. I know you welded.
Okay, what's the inspiration for these unusual shapes? I heard part about the circles, but what about the
The
other?
shapes, the forms and things I have in the shop playing around, I work very component oriented. So I collect or build components in the studio, and then I'm able to orchestrate them and put them into different arrangements that are pleasing to me, and they feel right, and then I weld them out and put them together. So there's like shopping carts full of cubes, and I got piles of rings, and I got pipes, but stuff will be capped and finished. And you make all these parts, and then you just kind of pull from your parts, and then you start putting these things together. Every artist has their own I guess, the way they do things. Some people work one piece only. You know, I couldn't do that. There's too much going on up here to work just on one piece, so I have to work on a bunch of different pieces. So, when I was building these, there was 3 pieces on the table, and I'd get bored with this one, then I'd go with this one, then I'd go with this one, then I'd go with this one. I guess working just kind of run around.
Like some junkyard, like visiting the junkyard.
Junkyards are fun.
Yeah.
They break ships down into port and Browns. I've been down to where they break the ships and stuff. And that's always fun to see the really big pieces of steel coming out of boats.
My question?
Yeah.
Have you found any cool steel here in Rockport?
Not yet. But don't think after this, I'll probably go look around a little bit. Clean it up. Yeah, I see stuff on the road too. I'll pick up. I did pick up a little piece that was on your it was on your dock. It was a little piece of rebar. And I said, I'm gonna take that with me. I'll do something later. And it's just Lena's like, what's this? I picked it up around. And she'll, we'll get in the car, so we'll get a piece of steel in the car. Where'd you find this? Oh, on the side of the road. So there's always, it's just, I was picking up this, I had a show in San Antonio in October, and the whole truck is going, Tahoe's full of metal, right? But the front foot compartment wasn't. So I went and bought 85 pounds of steel and stuck it up in the front foot compartment. And she's like, so you brought some metal home? I was like, yeah, I brought some metal home. I had to go get my fix. It's like kicking a junkie to a junkyard, just go with it. And you can find inspiration there. Some people are like, it's a junkyard. No, but you can find, there's a lot of interesting shapes and forms and things that, can spark ideas and things. And creatively, working in your studios when you're, some of y'all might be artists, working in the studios, cleaning up, moving things around, sometimes will spark an idea or a thing, and it just something kind of takes off from that whole process, the whole process of working. So anyway, it's just, yeah. But going to your studio is the most important thing. Working, whether you're doing a little bit or you're doing a lot, it's always important to have a good studio routine. Any questions?
Do you have a sketchbook? Do you work from planning, or how do you
I
plan?
did. And 18 and 19, there was a lot of sketchbook time because I was going through chemotherapy and I had to spend a lot of time drawing. So there are sketching. A lot of times it's just direct to building, like I said, building the components. That's the sketching for me, is building these pieces. And then, you can tack them and do different things and kind of play. So you're actually directly working with the material. But there are some sketches and things.
Do you combine materials, different materials?
Wood and steel, ceramic and steel, but
Glass?
not glass. I haven't messed too much with glass, And like I said, in college it was clay and steel, wood, and find old pallets. I like old oak pallets. Cut them up, carve them up. There's no wood pieces in here, but I do have pieces I've done that have wood in them.
What sculptors from art history challenge you or inspire you the most?
I was recently in Dallas and I was at the Nasher, and there's a really wonderful Mark Vasuro show. A lot of people, when you think of Mark Vasuro, you think of these massive pieces. These are all small, intimate pieces, and they're a lot of fun to kind of walk around and look at. And it's, for me, that's going to church. You want to see things. I love the object. I know there's other, installation art and other things like that, but I like object makers. I like craftsmanship. Is very important to me. It's the quality of the work and the thought that goes into it. So, David Smith, of course. I like Elizabeth Murray's crazy paintings. Robert Little, Frankenthaler. I met this 97-year-old sculptor at the Nasher named Thaddeus Mosley, and I was never familiar with his work, but it just kind of serendipity that was there. He's 97, still making work, and it's wood sculpture. They were wonderful pieces, very powerful, had a nice weight and a good feeling in the room when you're with these pieces. And that's something that's important to me. How does the work feel, does it evoke that kind of feeling, or just, it feel good to be around it, or, some people just walk past it, or, but it's that whole, somebody spent time with it, somebody worked on this, and there's a lot of life and energy put into this, so there's I guess a reference to the object.
When do you know your piece is done?
It's a good question.
It's a good question.
What was the question?
When do you know the piece is done?
Oh.
You just can't. I think you just know. If I do anything else, it just knows. Working with it long enough, you know when you're kind of done. And if there's still something you want to do with it, go on to the next, and then try and work out it in the next piece.
To let it sit there for a minute.
You let it sit there for a minute. Like I said, I work on a lot of pieces, so a lot of times I'll sit and then you kind of work your way around the room. Okay, that one's done. Move it off the table, put another one on, and keep going. So.
You say you work with more than one piece at a time, so
Yes.
you just.
So like this one, and the next one over was on the table. They just all kind of.
So you get this happy feeling.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, does this one actually screw onto that base, or is it fixed?
It's fixed. Yeah, but at one time it did screw. That's actually the base on that one is a hammer union. Another oil field part. There's actually a male and a female part, and this is a hammer union that they use in the oil field for connecting pieces of pipe and stuff. So there's another piece that's got 3 things that they use with a hammer, and they hammer it on and it locks onto this, basically as a bolt. So, yeah.
It looks like you had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, because of your dad, your oil field stuff, do you know what everything is when you look at a piece apart? If it's just out in the field or something?
Sometimes I phone a friend, I'll ask Dad, but a lot of times I know what some of the stuff is. Yeah, pretty good chance. I've been welding since on and off since 11 to then high school and then college, and then in '97 I had a welding business for a little while, and so I've been around it a long time.
What does your dad say about it?
He calls me a starving artist. I go, Dad, they don't believe you. You gotta look at me, So it's just, he's happy. I mean, his dad made jewelry. His dad, but he was also an earth mover. They build lakes and roads to the hill country. So my dad, I think he understands it. This is what I'm doing. Not changing directions. This is what the kid's doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, I think he enjoys it. He's what we've actually, in between, there was a lull in the oil field. He was bored at home, so I brought him over to the studio and he was working with me, and he helped me do a show a few years ago in San Antonio. Kind of fun working with Dad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you some tricks. Okay, Dad. So, and he does, he's always done where he showed us a little, how to do things a little bit easier. He says there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's what Dad says. So. Sorry to the cat people though.
I just wondered, do you just do stick welding or any other kind of?
I do MIG welding and stick welding.
Oh, you do MIG as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I made I built I guess 2 years ago I built it. It was the first big piece I did right after the whole cancer thing. It's about 12 feet tall. And I said, I'm gonna go old school. I'm gonna stick weld this whole thing. It's twice the work. Because you weld it, then you go back and clean it, and then you find if you have any gaps or anything, you go back and you fill those. And then it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. I call that piece Oculus. It stands 12 feet tall, weighs about 1,500 pounds, and my landlord in Harlingen owns, I think, about 50 buildings in downtown, but there's an empty lot in one where he's created his own kind of little sculpture park, and we planted that big one there. So,
You work only with steel?
Work with wood, steel,
But not bronze or.
bronze,
copper.
aluminum.
You need MIG for that, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've worked with bronze, I've worked with stainless, and I've worked with aluminum.
Aluminum is hard.
Aluminum is hard,
It
it's
melts
tricky.
too easy.
It melts too easy, but it also burns you too because it burns hot at the end. And yeah, aluminum's fun. Yeah.
Was it a lot of learn to live and learn? Or did, self-taught or?
I went to school. I worked with Richard. I learned a lot with him, and then learned a lot with my father, and then my grandfather showed me carpentry and plumbing and electrical. So there was a lot of learning along the way. But I tell young artists, I said, if you learn to work with your hands, you're never going to go hungry. So and it's yes, it's good to do your artwork, but also know how to use tools and things because you can fall into anything.
Are you connected with the schools?
I did a residency, about 5, 6, 7 years ago at the college. They gave
At
me
the
an
university.
They gave me artist residency. I did a residency in Kingsville. It's way back. I was there for spending a couple weeks there, setting up their welding studio for them. So, I'm one of the vice presidents of the Texas Sculpture Group. There's 150 members throughout the state.
A lot of them are educators.
A lot of them are educators. So, yeah.
You wouldn't consider yourself a beginner as an educator, or at least to give thought to an artist, a young artist?
I don't know.
You know some apprentices.
I met some apprentices.
Studio assistants.
Studio assistants that I've taught how to weld. There was a young man who was a film artist, and when the pandemic happened, he was home, and we gave him a show in the front studio. He's more works 2D and things. We gave him showed him, took back to the studio and showed him how to weld and grind and things like that. He really took a liking to it.
That sounds good.
One last question. Anyone want it? I'll take one. What's next? What are you doing aside from this
What's next?
exhibition? Where people continue to see your work?
Clean studio and build up my inventory. Right before this show, I had a gentleman come into the studio, bought 8 pieces, and then the lady's like, they didn't buy any of the ones. No, not those. They weren't in the room. The ones that we're using for the invites. I was like, yeah, no, those are still there. We're good. So. Yeah, I need to build up my inventory. I sold a lot of them. I had a show at the university, and I had a collector buy all the big pieces in the show. So I'm out of big work, and I need to get back to making some more stuff.
And maybe a contemporary, is it the Museo de Contemporáneo in the border?
Has offered me
Right across from Brownsville, which is in Matamoros.
talked about doing another show. I had a
Yeah.
show about 10 years ago there. It's a beautiful museum there in Matamoros.
So you are cataloging your pieces
Yeah.
through history.
There's an archive of all where they've gone and where they're at, who has them and things. That's the
As he
that's
looks
the
over to the
boss. That's
registrar.
that's the registrar over there. Yeah. Me and my wife met in college in 1994.
In sculpture class.
Sculpture class, yeah.